The United Bamboo Gang, or the Bamboo Union Gang, is one of the most fearsome triad gangs in the Pacific Rim today, and might have as many as 10,000 active members in Taiwan alone, with some reports putting that number closer to 100,000 worldwide. The group operates according to old-fashioned triad values, such as loyalty, courage, and a willingness to break the knees of people who don't cough up their money on time. The gang enforces a 10-rule code of conduct and has developed strong ties with other transnational criminal groups, including the Yakuza and the Sam Gore Syndicate. While members often refer to themselves as businessmen, the organization is involved in drug trafficking, contract killings, and other criminal enterprises. Beginning as a sort of East Asian murder company, the United Bamboo Gang foresaw the decline in the murder-for-hire industry in China and diversified into gambling, prostitution, and drugs. They'll still definitely kill you, though, so they haven't forgotten their roots. This is the story of how the Bamboo Union emerged from the rubble of war and fear, how it grew into one of the most powerful triads in Asia, and how it became a pivotal, hidden in plain sight, part of Taiwan's modern history. It is a tale of loyalty and betrayal, blood and honor, politics and violence. This is Beneath the Shadows. And thank you for being here. I appreciate you checking out the episode. I appreciate you stopping by to check out the show. I appreciate you coming back if you've listened to another episode. This is going to be about the Bamboo Union Gang, as I had mentioned, a gang in Taiwan that has developed from the 1950s until now. Still operating now. It's been over just about 50 years, actually, that they've been operating. Just about 70 years that they've been operating. My stupid ass brain said 50. I'm like, yeah, 50 years. Yeah, no, 70 years. 70 years that they've been operating. It's going to be some incredible kind of crazy stuff today. We're going to talk about a few in particular people, a few leaders. We're going to talk about their timeline from the 1950s when they first started to pretty much modern day, to 2025 is when our last update comes from them. So pretty much up until right now. And we're going to talk about the entirety of their crazy shit that they've done. Beyond that, please check out Instagram. We have an Instagram you can follow for show updates, for behind-the-scenes kind of material. Hasn't been updated as much recently. I've been slacking a lot with the show, and I apologize. And I know people haven't been complaining, but I do appreciate anyone. I appreciate you. I appreciate anyone who's checking out the show, and I don't want to slack off or fall behind. I've had a lot going on in life. I'm prepping to go back to school. I have work. I have life obligations that come up, and it's been a lot to try to get the show out to you and get my recording done, my editing done, and just stay up on everything. So I appreciate you checking back. I appreciate you stopping here and checking out the episode. I appreciate you taking the time to follow us on Instagram. And beyond that, there's also an apparel side of it. You can check that out. I will get the link put up in the Instagram if it's not already, where you can click the button and go to the shop store for Beneath the Shadows and get mugs or t-shirts or socks or hats or whatever the fuck you're thinking. You can get that from the store, so please check that out also. Beyond that, there is a Patreon if you want to check that out. It also is kind of slacking on the updates. I need to get episodes updated on there, so there's always an ad-free option. I will be releasing bonus content at some point when I get really back into it and back in the groove. I'm going to be very busy, and so I appreciate you just being patient, taking the time to check out the show, and, I appreciate you living the best life that you can. So, with that, let's dive into today's episode. Let's tackle this crazy story, and let's pull the Bamboo Union Gang of Taiwan out from beneath the shadows. In the early morning haze that rolls over the streets of Taipei, there's an invisible current humming beneath the surface, the pulse of the Bamboo Union. Before they were a name feared across Asia, before they shaped the course of Taiwan's political underworld, they were simply a group of young men searching for protection, power, and purpose. The year was 1956, and Taiwan was still raw after the aftershocks of war, migration, and authoritarian rule. The Kuomintang, KMT. So the Kuomintang is spelled Kuomintang, and it's abbreviated as KMT, Kuomintang. Having fled mainland China after the communist victory, had established a fragile base on the island. It was an era of martial law, repression, and rapid transformation. The Bamboo Union began not as a criminal syndicate, but as a street gang. Their founders were mostly teenage boys, many of them Waishengren, the children of mainland Chinese who had fled to Taiwan with the KMT following the nationalist retreat from mainland China after 1949 and the end of the Chinese Civil War. In the schools of Taipei, these students often found themselves at odds with native Taiwanese youth. Clashes were common, alliances formed, loyalty was everything. It was in the corridors of Taipei's high school that the earliest seeds were sown. What started as a mutual defense pact among bullied youths to defend themselves against the local Haklo, which is a group of people, Chinese people that were, local and native to the land, quickly grew into an organized gang. They adopted the name Zhu Lian Bong, or Bang Bong, Zhu Lian Bong, ZhuLianBang, which stands for the Bamboo Union, a symbolic gesture that spoke to the unity and strength. Just as bamboo bends but doesn't break, so too would the brotherhood they forged. At first, their activities were small-scale, protecting turf, engaging in petty theft, and running minor rackets in the city's poorer districts. But the Bamboo Union had ambition, and more importantly, they had discipline. From the start, their leaders imposed military-like structure and a code of honor that set them apart from other street gangs. This discipline would become one of their greatest strengths, helping them evolve from neighborhood thugs to international players. Yet, their rise was not only due to internal cohesion. The Bamboo Union's ascent was accelerated by a powerful and often controversial factor: their relationship with the state. As Taiwan's political landscape grew more complex, so did the symbiosis between organized crime and political power. The Bamboo Union found itself increasingly aligned with the Kuomintang's interests. In some cases, they were used as tools of political enforcement, intimidating dissidents, breaking up protests, even operating as covert extensions of the military intelligence network. Within 10 years, what had started in a high school courtyard was now a sprawling criminal enterprise with ties to narcotics, arms trafficking, extortion, and even international assassinations. But this rise came at a price. With power came enemies, both within Taiwan and beyond. The 1960s, though, were a crucible for Taiwan, economically, politically, and socially. The island was still under martial law, a period known as the White Terror, where dissent was crushed and opposition was treated as sedition. A period of political repression under Chiang Kai-shek that lasted from May 20th, 1949 to June 3rd, 1991. During this time, surveillance was constant, informants were everywhere, but in the cracks left, new systems of control emerged. Not always from the government, but from the streets. Bamboo Union members were knowingly employed by by Taiwanese government agencies such as the National Security Bureau and the Intelligence Bureau. Some even enrolled in military, police, and intelligence academies, rising to influential positions within the government. This era for the Bamboo Union was an era of consolidation. While many street gangs came and went, the Bamboo Union refined its organization. What set them apart was their structure: a clear hierarchy, strict rules, and an emphasis on ritualized brotherhoods. Unlike other hierarchical groups like Japanese Yakuza or Italy's Mafia, unlike other hierarchical groups like Japan's Yakuza or Italy's Mafia, the Bamboo Union operates with a decentralized structure. The gang is divided into divisions and further split into branches. Each group is led by a brig brother. Each group is led by a big brother, a daji or dage, DA_GE, a powerful figure who wielded both respect and fear. Below him were middlemen, who controlled subdivisions or branches, each with their own turf and revenue streams. At the bottom were the little brothers, foot soldiers, and initiates whose loyalty was constantly tested. Like the Japanese Yakuza, the Bamboo Union used yubutsume. Yubutsume? I'm going to say it's yubitsume. 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 The severing of the little finger as punishment. And they would also break the arms or legs of young members as punishment. While members may operate independently, they must cooperate during crises or high-stakes ventures, or risk one of these severe punishments. And loyalty is the currency of survival. Initiation ceremonies were conducted in secrecy. Under the glow of incense and candles, pledges were made in blood. A chicken was slaughtered, oaths were recited, often invoking Buddhist or Taoist imagery, though belief was less important than obedience. The newly initiated swore undying allegiance to the gang and acceptance of death before dishonor. Once inside, there was no easy way out. Territory wars had become more frequent. In the streets of Taipei, the Bamboo Union clashed with rival gangs like the Four Seas Gang and the Heavenly Way Alliance. These were not just fistfights, they were brutal, calculated acts of violence. Stabbings in alleyways, street ambushes with bats and machetes, and even drive-by attacks with crude homemade bombs. Each victory was a step towards dominance. Each loss demanded retaliation. But violence wasn't their only trade. The Bamboo Union expanded into gambling dens, protection rackets, and underground casinos. They set up fronts, tea houses, massage parlors, karaoke lounges, businesses that acted as both income generators and surveillance hubs. Drugs soon followed, particularly heroin. Taiwan's location in East Asia made it an ideal node in the Golden Triangle's drug trade. The Bamboo Union began establishing connections with suppliers in Southeast Asia and smugglers in Hong Kong and Macau. Police were often outgunned, outnumbered, or simply bought off. This was the time when the Bamboo Union learned to walk a double life. Feared enforcers in the night, seemingly respectable businessmen by day. But perhaps their most defining move came in the form of political alignment. Unlike other gangs that tried to remain apolitical, the Bamboo Union made a choice. They would get closer to the power. Some say the relationship began with convenience. The ruling Kuomintang saw potential in utilizing gangs as informal enforcers. The Bamboo Union, with their fierce loyalty and structure, were ideal for covert operations. Others believed it was a mutual seduction, where the gang sought legitimacy and the state sought muscle. In this era, the Vietnam War era, brought thousands of U.S. soldiers on rest and recuperation trips to Taiwan. A good R&R trip. Just, taking some time, getting away from the war, away from fucking Vietnam, doing other shit. This influx of cash and opportunity significantly expanded the gang's influence. Bamboo Union members were often welcomed by nightclub owners to protect their establishments from rival ethnic Taiwanese gangs. During this time, the group began evolving into a transnational criminal organization. Notably, in 1968, leader Chang An-lo, known as the White Wolf, moved to Las Vegas to oversee operations in U.S. Chinatowns and gambling hubs. By the end of the decade, the Bamboo Union was no longer just a gang. They were a parallel institution operating in the shadow of the government. In public, they rarely drew attention. Their leaders wore suits. They sent their children to elite schools. They hosted community events. But under the surface, they were consolidating power, acquiring weapons, building a network of overseas contacts, and preparing for the next evolution. The world was changing. So would they. Taiwan was transforming from a closed military dictatorship into a modern economic player. In that shift, there were gaps, cracks in enforcement, loopholes in trade, emerging black markets. The Bamboo Union would be ready. By the early 1970s, the Bamboo Union stood at a pivotal juncture. Their grip on Taipei's underworld was firm, their ranks swelling with young men seeking power, protection, or simply a place in the world that offered little else. But it was no longer just about the streets. The Bamboo Union was evolving, its operations expanding beyond Taiwan's shores, its ambition sharpening into something bigger. The gang's relationship with the ruling KMT party deepened in this era. Taiwan, isolated diplomatically after being expelled from the United Nations in 1971, leaned even harder on its internal mechanisms of control and influence. In this vacuum, the Bamboo Union found its niche: unofficial enforcers of state ideology and political intimidation. They weren't just protecting gambling halls anymore. They were surveilling dissidents, silencing critics, even carrying out political hits. One of the most infamous and telling events in the gang's history occurred in 1984, but the foundation was laid in the preceding decade. The United States had shifted diplomatic recognition from Taipei to Beijing, a devastating blow to Taiwan's global standing. Nationalist sentiment surged, and so too did paranoia. The KMT's military intelligence bureau and security services began working more closely with elements of organized crime to carry out covert operations, especially overseas. The Bamboo Union was the perfect proxy. Well-trained, fiercely loyal, and untraceable in an official sense, their members could operate outside the law while shielding those pulling the strings. In return, the gang was granted protection, information, and sometimes even tacit approval from law enforcement. But even as they became tools of the state, they continued to grow independently. By the mid-1970s, the Bamboo Union had established a significant presence in Southeast Asia, especially in Bangkok and Hong Kong. These cities served as logistical hubs for arms trafficking, drug shipments, and forgery rings. Through these networks, they formed ties with international syndicates, most notably the Japanese Yakuza and the Hong Kong Triads. These relationships were transactional, but strategic. The Bamboo Union offered access to Taiwan's ports and its markets. In return, they gained entry into new territories and learned from older, more established crime families how to launder money, avoid surveillance, and maintain discipline across borders. Back home, the gang began to infiltrate more legitimate industries. Construction firms, import-export companies, nightclubs, and even banks bore the hidden fingerprints of Bamboo Union capital. It was a strategy of concealment, burying illegal income under layers of legality. With bribes and influence, city permits were fast-tracked, police reports lost, and judges persuaded to look the other way. For those inside, rank and protocol were everything. Members were expected to follow a strict code, respect the chain of command, protect the gang's secrets, and never betray your brothers. Violators were punished harshly, some disappeared, others were made examples of in a brutal fashion. But those who remained loyal were rewarded. Access to lucrative ventures, prestige in the streets, and a sense of belonging. By the end of the decade, the Bamboo Union was no longer just a gang. It had become an institution, capable of violence, yes, but also of governance within its own ranks. Its tentacles reached into government, business, and overseas markets. It moved drugs, people, and weapons across oceans. It could make people vanish or rise to power. In the 1980s, the Bamboo Union partnered with the Iron Blood Patriots to carry out overseas operations. In return, both groups were granted lucrative access to the international heroin trade. However, this alliance crumbled after 1984. But before that moment came, there would be blood. On October 15, 1984, the body of Henry Liu was discovered slumped over a desk in his garage in Daly City, California. He had been shot multiple times at close range, twice in the head and twice in the body. At first glance, it seemed like a targeted execution, but the truth would be far more chilling than anyone could have imagined. Henry Liu, also known by his pen name Shang Nan, Henry Liu is Henry and then Liu. Liu is the last name. And then his pen name Shang Nan is Chiangnan. Chiang is the first name, Nan is the last name, was a Taiwanese American journalist and author. He had long been critical of Taiwan's ruling KMT regime. His latest work, a biography on then-President Chiang Ching-kuo, was set to be published and contained damning critiques of the government and its political machinery. For Liu, it was simply an act of political expression. For the KMT, it was something far more dangerous, an act of betrayal. What unfolded next would expose the murky and deadly intersection of state and power and organized crime in Taiwan, and thrust the Bamboo Union onto the world stage. At the time of the assassination, suspicions naturally pointed towards political motives. Liu had been harassed and monitored by Taiwanese officials before, but it wasn't until months later that a shocking truth emerged. The hit had been carried out by members of the Bamboo Union under orders from the Taiwanese Military Intelligence Bureau. The operation had been overseen by General Wang Si-ling, head of Taiwan's Military Intelligence Bureau. According to testimony later provided in court, Wang, or Wang, however you want to say it, W-A-N-G, had personally contacted gang leaders and contracted the Bamboo Union to eliminate Liu. An extraordinary example of a government outsourcing political assassination to organized crime. The assassination had been planned by Chen Shi-li, leader of the Bamboo Union Triad, and carried out by two Bamboo Union members, Wu Tun and Tung Ku Sen. Wu Tun is W-U-T-U-N, Wu Tun, and Tung Ku Sen is T-U-N-G-K-U-E-I, and then dash S-E-N, Ku Sen. All had close ties to Taiwan's intelligence community. Chen, in particular, was a fascinating and complex figure. Charismatic, ambitious, and well-educated, he operated with the demeanor of a corporate executive rather than a street thug. He embodied the Bamboo Union's evolution, from street enforcer to shadow state operative. Shen had acted on the request of the head of the KMT's Military Intelligence Bureau, Vice Admiral Wang Si-ling, as I had mentioned, who had requested that Liu be given a lesson, quote-unquote, after writing articles critical of the KMT government. The hit was carried out with chilling precision. Liu was lured into a garage under false pretenses and shot to death without a trace of struggle. The killers fled the United States quickly, returning to Taiwan where they were initially sheltered. It wasn't until the international pressure mounted, particularly from the U.S. government, that Taiwan was forced to investigate and take action. When the plot unraveled, it became a diplomatic firestorm. The United States was furious that a murder had been orchestrated on its soil by a supposed ally using criminal intermediaries. Taiwan, already struggling with international recognition, now faced severe reputational damage. Under intense global scrutiny, the Taiwanese government did something almost unthinkable. They prosecuted their own intelligence chief and the gangsters who carried out the murder. In response to the public outcry over Liu's murder, the government carried out Operation Clean Sweep, a widespread crackdown that led to the arrest of 2,346 gangsters and a confiscation of large quantities of guns and knives. The trial that followed the murder was historic. General Wang Xi-ling was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Shen Qi-li and Wu Tun also received life sentences, though Shen would be paroled in 1991 under suspiciously lenient terms. In 1996, Shen Qi-li learned that he was once again wanted by the authorities and fled to Cambodia, where he stayed for many years until his death. After giving Taiwanese media an interview in 2000 in his luxurious Phnom Penh, Phnom Penh, PHNOM, something Pen resident. I should have looked this one up. Phnom Penh, during which he displayed weapons before the camera. He was arrested by Cambodian police in July the same year and charged with illegal possession of weapons and involvement in organized crime. He was released in August 2001 after serving 13 months in jail. He would live the rest of his life in Cambodia, allegedly continuing to pull strings with the Bamboo Union until his death in 2007. The Henry Liu assassination had far-reaching consequences. It exposed how deeply entwined the Bamboo Union had become with the political and intelligence apparatus of Taiwan. It revealed how the gang's reaches extended far beyond Taiwan's borders, capable of executing high-profile political assassinations on foreign soil. And it forced the world to reckon with the idea that Taiwan, often seen as a democratic underdog, harbored elements willing to kill the silenced dissent. But for the Bamboo Union, the fallout was mixed. While the Liu case brought unwanted attention, it also solidified their reputation as an international power player. They had executed a hit that shook diplomatic foundations. During the same period, in 1986, Taiwanese defendants were indicted on conspiracy charges for operating as a part of the international gang, for involvement in gambling, drug trafficking, and prostitution under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, the RICO Act. On August 4, 1986, Houston-based attorney Jan W. Fox questioned Detective Robert Chung, who had infiltrated the gang. Believing that they were expanding their narcotics operation in several cities, the gang unwittingly recruited FBI agent Stephen Wong and other law enforcement officers, including Chung, into their fold. Ultimately, 8 members of United Bamboo received sentences ranging from 10 to 25 years from Judge Robert L. Carter of the U.S. District Court for the South District of New York. From that point on, the Bamboo Union would shift gears again. No longer mere enforcers or proxies, they would become true transnational operators, expanding into new regions, new industries, and new methods of control. They had proven they could kill for power, no matter the consequence. Now, they would learn to thrive in the chaos it left behind. All right, and we're going to break off really quick. We're going to talk about the death of Chen Qi-li and one of the other leaders who died this year in 2025. Chen Qi-li, the guy that we just talked about who orchestrated the murder of Henry Liu. We're going to talk about him, talk about some of his life after he left, talk about his death, and talk about another man's death who was Huang Shao-sen, talk about his death as well. So, we have the death of former leader Chen Qi-li, a polarizing figure who blurred the lines between crime and politics, who died of cancer in 2007. His lavish funeral drew over 10,000 mourners, including politicians and representatives from triads across Asia, such as Japan's Yakuza, and crime families from Hong Kong, Malaysia, and Thailand. The ceremony was closely monitored by over 1,000 Taiwanese police. The family reportedly spent over 20 million new Taiwan dollars to ensure a grand farewell. And I mean, that's not a small amount of money. It's not like, equivalent to 20 million here, but it's like $630,000 or something like that here in the US to United States dollars. So pretty fucking expensive funeral, pretty lavish and crazy funeral. They ensured a grand farewell for him. The overwhelming attendance at the high profile funeral of Chen Shi-li forced the international community to recognize the continued operations and power of the Bamboo Union Gang. Additionally, like I said, we were going to talk about another leader who passed away. Another Bamboo Gang leader, Huang Shao-sen, Huang, Huang, and Shao-sen is SHAO-TSEN, Shao-sen. He was buried in Taipei in the presence of 1,800 guests and 430 police officers looking out for fugitives from the law. Huang died on February 4th of this year, 2025, at the Taipei Veterans General Hospital at the age of 75, after reportedly leading Taiwan's largest gang for the last 15 years. In common with funerals of prominent organized crime leaders, police prepared extra patrols to prevent incidents, but also to locate suspects. At the burial, 3 fugitives wanted in separate cases of fraud, drugs, and organized crime were detained by authorities, while police questioned 2 minors at the local station while contacting their parents. The guest list at the funeral included mourners from U.S., Japan, Hong Kong, Macau, Cambodia, Vietnam, the Philippines, and South Korea. One of the most prominent Taiwanese attending the event was one of Huang's predecessors, Shang An Lo, also known as the White Wolf. So, Henry Liu has been assassinated. Chen Shi-li passed away in 2007. We talked about Huang Sen, who passed away this year. Let's bounce back a little bit to the end of the Henry Liu assassination, the downfall from that, and then move forward from there back in the timeline. In the wake of the Henry Liu assassination and the explosive revelations that followed, the Bamboo Union found itself at a crossroads. The gang had just executed one of the most politically charged murders in Taiwanese history at the behest of its own government. And they got caught. The international backlash had been immense. For many criminal organizations, this kind of heat would have spelled the end. But not for the Bamboo Union. Instead of crumbling under scrutiny, the gang adapted. They understood something few criminal enterprises ever truly grasp. Visibility is a liability. So they began to evolve, not by going underground, but by going legitimate. Or, at least, legitimate on the surface. By the late 1890s, holy hell, yeah, let's go 100 years before. By the late 1980s and into the 1990s, the Bamboo Union began diversifying their portfolio. Gone were the days when the operations were limited to street extortion, nightclub rackets, and protection schemes. Now, they were investing in construction companies, real estate, entertainment, finance, and the tech boom sweeping across East Asia. Many of these businesses served as fronts, laundering money, securing influence, and allowing gangsters to present themselves as respectable businessmen. But this wasn't a retreat from crime. It was an expansion. While they polished their public image, the Bamboo Union deepened their presence in illicit enterprises across Southeast Asia. Taiwan's political shift towards democratization, marked by the lifting of martial law in 1987, had created a new dynamic. With the government less willing to openly rely on the gang and more cautious under international pressure, the Bamboo Union looked abroad for new opportunities and alliances. Organized crime saw a surge in the supply of drugs, resulting from a reduction in maritime patrols. Mob infiltration of businesses and politics became more common in the 1990s. Drug trafficking, though, became one of their most profitable and deadly ventures. The Golden Triangle, where the borders of Thailand, Laos, and Myanmar meet, had long been one of the world's largest producers of heroin. The Bamboo Union didn't just move product, they helped coordinate distribution pipelines, secure transport routes, and launder the proceeds through their businesses back in Taiwan and Hong Kong. From opium dens in Bangkok to nightclubs in Taipei, the gang became a silent partner in a billion-dollar industry. Human trafficking and gun smuggling were also added to their portfolio. Using the same networks they had built for drugs, the Bamboo Union facilitated the movement of undocumented laborers and sex workers across borders, exploiting poverty and desperation on an industrial scale. They supplied weapons to regional insurgents and criminal militias, deepening their influence in Southeast Asia's murky underworld. And with that growth came new power. In Thailand, Cambodia, and the Philippines, local triads and crime groups formed alliances or were absorbed outright. In Hong Kong and Macau, the Bamboo Union positioned itself as a partner to native syndicates, exchanging muscle and logistics for financial access. But their rise wasn't just about brute force. It was also about soft power. The Bamboo Union continued cultivating relationships with political figures, both in Taiwan and abroad. They made donations to political campaigns under false identities. They funded community events. They offered security services to local politicians. In some cities, their leaders sat at the same tables as corporate CEOs and government officials, wearing tailored suits, not leather jackets. But as the Bamboo Union grew in scale, so too did the dangers of internal division. The 1990s saw an influx of new members, many with little loyalty to the original code of the gang. Factions began forming. Some favored aggression expansion into new rackets, while others urged a more corporate, business-like approach. At times, violent clashes erupted between Bamboo Union cliques. Fueled by drug profits, personal vendettas, and territorial disputes. Meanwhile, the Taiwanese government, now democratic and increasingly influenced by reformist voices, started cracking down harder. Anti-gang laws were passed, high-profile raids were launched. Some of the gang's old leaders, sensing that their time was up, fled to Cambodia or mainland China. Others stayed and adapted again, embedding themselves deeper into the machinery of both illegal and legal enterprises. By the dawn of the 21st century, the Bamboo Union wasn't just a Taiwanese gang anymore. They could kill in silence or smile in a boardroom. They had moved from blood to business, and in doing so, they had become almost untouchable. By 2008, it was ranked by the U.S. magazine Foreign Policy as one of the world's most dangerous gangs. In July of 2009, Chinese Bamboo Union hitman Bai Zhao Ye stabbed and slashed a man to death in a Las Vegas, Nevada karaoke bar and wounded 2 others. In 2013, Bai was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Bai had also been charged with fatally shooting a man and wounding another at a Los Angeles karaoke bar. But shadows this long always cast something darker at their center. And for the Bamboo Union, their darkness was far from finished. As the 21st century progressed, the face of the organization began to change. The traditional image of gangsters, tattooed enforcers wielding pistols and baseball bats, was slowly eclipsed by a new kind of criminal. Quiet, educated, digital. And the Bamboo Union, ever adaptive, evolved once again. In the early 2000s, as Taiwan surged forward with technological development, so too did its criminal underworld. High-speed internet, widespread mobile connectivity, and the digitization of banking systems opened new doors, new vulnerabilities. Where once the Bamboo Union had extorted cash from brothels and back-alley bars, now they siphoned money through keyboard strokes and keystroke loggers. It was the dawn of the cybercrime era, and the Bamboo Union wasn't just along for the ride. They were driving the bus. Now, the gang began actively recruiting a new breed of member. Young, tech-savvy, and disillusioned with Taiwan's rigid work culture, these recruits didn't need street smarts, they needed coding skills. Many were lured by the promise of fast money, luxurious lifestyles, and a chance to break free from the monotony of a 9-to-5 life. Some came from local tech schools, others were self-taught prodigies. The result was a significant shift in operations. Phishing scams, ransomware attacks, identity theft, and financial fraud became core parts of the gang's expanding empire. The Bamboo Union established shell companies posing as tech startups, web design firms, and customer service providers. They targeted victims not just in Taiwan, but around the globe, particularly in China, Southeast Asia, and the West. One of their most lucrative ventures involved so-called boiler rooms, call centers staffed with gang-affiliated workers who posed as investment brokers. Victims were promised high returns on fake cryptocurrency projects, gold investments, or stock portfolios. Once they were hooked, their life savings were drained. These operations were often set up in places like Cambodia, Myanmar, and the Philippines, where enforcement was weak and corruption rampant. Meanwhile, back in Taiwan, the Bamboo Union's political entanglements didn't disappear. They simply matured. As old members aged out or died off, the younger generation didn't always see the value in direct political confrontation. Instead of orchestrating assassinations or marching in protest rallies, they cultivated quieter forms of influence. Campaign donations, property development deals, media investments, and silent partnerships with local business elites. They also invested in public-facing enterprises designed to polish their image. Nightclubs, restaurants, casinos, and even charity events. The lines between gangster, businessman, and celebrity became increasingly blurred. Some high-ranking members were now seen in a glossy magazine and tabloid headlines, posing beside models and socialites at rooftop parties in Taipei or Bangkok. But the modernization of the Bamboo Union wasn't without friction. The more they expanded, the more fragmented they became. Old Guard members, those who had grown up on the violent streets of post-martial law Taiwan, resented the shift towards laptops and luxury condos. They believed the soul of the Bamboo Union was being sold for Bitcoin and image management. Fistfights turned to firebombings, cyber schemers clashed with old-school extortionists. More than one high-ranking member was found dead under suspicious circumstances, killed not by the police, but by their own. These internal fractures were made worse by law enforcement's growing sophistication. In the late 2010s and early 2020s, international cooperation between police forces became more effective. Joint cybercrime task force, data sharing agreements, and extradition treaties allowed authorities to begin unraveling some of the Bamboo Union's most complex networks. Raids in Phnom Penh and Manila uncovered computer farms, wire fraud centers, and torture cells used to discipline disobedient workers. Yet, the gang remained resilient. For every blow dealt by police, the Bamboo Union splintered, reformed, and resurfaced, like a hydra regrowing its heads. Part of this resilience came from their operational model, decentralized, fluid, and layered. Many members didn't even realize that they were part of the Bamboo Union. They worked for companies, obeyed supervisors, followed scripts, never knowing that their employer answered to a syndicate that traced its roots back to the Civil War and street warfare. The Bamboo Union was no longer just a gang. It was a digital-era syndicate, a criminal enterprise as comfortable navigating offshore bank accounts as it is in controlling night markets or high-rise clubs. They are embedded in the circuitry of the modern world, surfacing in fraud cases, darknet markets, and encrypted chat rooms. And while some branches still peddle heroin and guns, the real power now flows through fiber optics and financial networks. They have become, in many ways, invisible. But invisibility is not invincibility. As they push deeper into the digital crime and high finance, the Bamboo Union risks drawing the attention of powerful adversaries, not just the police, but rival syndicates, governments, and private intelligence firms. The next phase of their story will not be written in back alleys or prison cells. It will unfold in code, in data leaks, in financial crashes. The Bamboo Union has survived revolution, assassination, and reinvention. But survival is not the same as safety. By 2018, the Bamboo Union and the other main triads of Taiwan were in close cooperation due to a sluggish economy and the increasing strictness of the Taiwanese government, keeping disputes to a minimum. None of this was a sudden shift. It was a long, careful infiltration. For decades, rumors swirled that the elements of the Bamboo Union maintained contact with factions inside the Communist Chinese Party, or the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP. These weren't the usual criminal liaisons, drug suppliers, or arms dealers, but agents of the United Front Work Department, Beijing's political influence arm. The United Front had one purpose: to advance China's interests globally, often through covert alliances with non-state actors. And for certain operatives, Taiwan remained the ultimate prize. The Bamboo Union, with its vast networks, deep roots in Taiwan's underworld, and a history of political muscle, was an ideal asset. Initial contracts were subtle: a donation here, a private meeting there, a helping hand smoothing over a business deal, or facilitating access to key influencers in Taiwan's media and political circles. Over time, these gestures evolved into what intelligence agencies now describe as a gray zone influence operation. Campaigns designed to erode it from within. Members of the Bamboo Union were recruited or volunteered to support United Front goals. They helped finance pro-China political rallies. They spread disinformation through bot farms and social media networks. In some cases, they intimidated journalists, academics, or public officials who spoke too loudly in favor of Taiwanese independence. Their methods were subtle but chilling: anonymous threats, online harassment, whispered warnings over late-night phone calls. In return, the Bamboo Union received something priceless: protection. As long as their activities didn't threaten Beijing's interests, they were largely left alone in mainland China. Some even established safe havens in cities like Shenzhen or Guangzhou, where they ran operations with relative impunity. A few high-ranking members began cultivating a legitimate business interest inside the PRC, the People's Republic of China, real estate, casinos, logistics, and technology imports, using CCP-connected intermediaries to mask their involvement. In 2020, the island's National Security Bureau issued a classified report, later leaked to the press, detailing growing ties between organized crime groups and mainland political actors. The Bamboo Union, the report warned, had become a conduit of subnational influence, operating in a murky space where statecraft, espionage, and criminal enterprise collided. The threat wasn't just physical violence, but ideological corrosion. One key incident solidified public awareness of this shadow network. A year prior, in 2019, during Taiwan's heated presidential election cycle, a self-proclaimed ex-spy named William Wang defected to Australia. He alleged that he had participated in efforts to meddle in Taiwanese politics using gangs, media outlets, and business proxies. Though his claims were partially disputed, they aligned with broader intelligence concerns already building behind closed doors. The Bamboo Union denied involvement, but insiders knew the truth was rarely black and white. Even within the gang, not all members agreed on the value or danger of aligning with Beijing. Some saw it as pragmatic, a source of funding and protection. Others viewed it as a betrayal of the gang's independence, a dangerous gamble that risked turning them into puppets of a foreign power. Tensions grew. Whispers of internal dissent echoed through Taipei's underworld. Some younger members wanted out, fearful that the gang was straying too far from its roots and walking straight into a geopolitical minefield. Others embraced the change, seeing it as the future of organized crime. Not guns and tattoos, but policy influence, business clout, and global reach. International intelligence agencies began paying closer attention. Taiwanese counterintelligence ramped up surveillance. Japan's National Police Agency flagged Bamboo Union activity in Tokyo and Osaka. Even the FBI noted connections between Taiwanese gangs and Chinese financial backers operating shell companies in Los Angeles and Vancouver. And yet, the Bamboo Union continued to operate, quietly, effectively, and strategically. They had become what many feared most, not a gang of thugs, but a hybrid entity. Part mafia, part business empire, part political tool. Their presence could destabilize elections, distort information, or sabotage diplomacy, all without firing a single bullet. This new model of syndicate influence posed a unique challenge for democratic societies. How do you fight a gang that wears suits, funds campaigns, and speaks the language of investment portfolios and cultural exchange? The answer wasn't clear. But what was clear is that the Bamboo Union had entered a new arena. No longer confined to Taiwan streets, they now walked among statesmen, financiers, and intelligence operatives. They had traded fists for files, guns for influence, and in doing so, they had become something far more dangerous than a mere criminal organization. They had become a force of asymmetrical power. By the 2020s, the Bamboo Union no longer needed to brandish machetes in the alleys of Taipei to command respect. Their influence had metastasized, expanding well beyond Taiwan, threading through the arteries of international finance, cybercrime, and cross-border trafficking. They had become what analysts call a transnational crime syndicate. But in practice, they were more than that. A global force moving fluidly between crime, commerce, and political shadow play. In Southeast Asia, they took advantage of porous borders and weak anti-corruption enforcement. In Vietnam and Cambodia, gang operatives forged partnerships with local crime bosses to control ports, drug shipments, and human trafficking routes. Casinos became key money laundering hubs, not just for the Bamboo Union, but for Chinese triads, Russian mobsters, and rogue financiers. The distinction between legal enterprise and criminal syndicate blurred in the humid halls of VIP gambling rooms. In Japan, though the Yakuza remained dominant, the Bamboo Union forged a careful relationship with select factions. These weren't traditional alliances. Cultural differences and territoriality prevented full cooperation, but rather issue-based collaborations. Smuggling routes, arms transfers, and high-stakes identity fraud operations brought the syndicates into alignment when convenient. The shared enemy, law enforcement and digital surveillance. Meanwhile, in the United States and Canada, the Bamboo Union operated more subtly. In cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Vancouver, and Toronto, the gang embedded itself within immigrant communities, often under the guise of fraternal associations or cultural societies. These organizations provide real services, like legal aid, language classes, business networking, but beneath the surface, they offered sanctuary for fugitive members, funneled laundered money into real estate, and facilitated deals within Latin America cartels trafficking fentanyl and methamphetamines. American authorities took note. The DEA, FBI, and Homeland Security all flagged the Bamboo Union as a Tier 1 transnational threat. not necessarily for their body count, but for their sophistication. In cybercrime forums, operatives linked to the gang trafficked in phishing kits, cryptocurrency wallets, and ransomware as a service. They weren't just smuggling people and drugs, they were hacking banks, hospitals, and municipal networks. The gang had adapted to the times. One telling example came in 2021, when a Taiwanese national with suspected ties to the Bamboo Union was arrested in Bangkok. He wasn't caught with drugs or guns, but with servers. Racks of machines running a call center scam targeting elderly Americans. The operation had netted tens of millions of dollars, and it wasn't an outlier. Cybercrime had become the fastest growing gang revenue stream. Cybercrime had become the gang's fastest growing revenue stream. The roughneck enforcers of the 1980s were increasingly sidelined by college-educated recruits, some trained in IT, law, or international finance. These weren't street thugs, they were strategists. They knew how to move ghost money through layers of shell companies, how to manipulate cryptocurrencies, and how to court politicians through gray market campaign donations and PACs. Yet, with this global expansion came friction. The Bamboo Union now found itself in competition and cooperation with other transnational syndicates, like the Chinese Triads and the Japanese Yakuza, the Russian Bratva, and the Mexican cartels. Sometimes their interests aligned, particularly in smuggling or money laundering. Other times, turf wars broke out silently. Bribes countered with counter-bribes, shipments intercepted, low-level players found dead with no one to claim responsibility. International law enforcement struggled to keep up. The very tools meant to track terror networks, financial sanctions, international warrants, intelligence sharing, were too slow to adapt to a criminal group that could just as easily pose as a business delegation as it could a drug cartel. And perhaps more dangerously, the Bamboo Union had learned the art of invisibility. Unlike flashier syndicates that reveled in violence or spectacle, the Bamboo Union had perfected the low profile. They thrived in ambiguity. Their power was most evident when it wasn't noticed at all. When elections swung unexpectedly, when legislation stalled mysteriously, when illicit shipments disappeared without trace or consequence. They had become, in effect, a shadow multinational. If the Bamboo Union could be everywhere, and yet nowhere, who could stop them? No empire, however shadowed or silent, lasts forever. Not without sacrifice, reinvention, or rupture. Nowadays, the Bamboo Union stands tall as one of the most enduring and far-reaching criminal organizations in East Asia. But, from the inside, stress fractures had begun to spread. Beneath the sleek operations and political connections, something older, more volatile, was beginning to shake loose. The first signs of trouble came from within. In 2024, a mid-level lieutenant with operations in Taipei and Kaohsiung, 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 possibly, turned state witness after being arrested in a joint DEA-Taiwanese operation. His testimony unveiled years of internal feuding, kickbacks to Taiwanese politicians, and covert deals with foreign intelligence agencies. It also uncovered how the gang had been quietly assisting Chinese state-linked entities, alarming many in Taiwan's already fragile democracy. The Taiwanese government, long accused of turning a blind eye, had no choice but to act. Sweeping arrests followed, businesses tied to Bamboo Union frontmen were raided, bank accounts were frozen, surveillance of suspected members increased tenfold. For the first time in decades, high-ranking members went into hiding, or fled overseas entirely. But even as the walls closed in, the Bamboo Union adapted. Some operatives disappeared into the wind, leveraging international passports and foreign identities. Others pivoted further into digital crime, where prosecution was harder, evidence was more ephemeral, and accountability nearly non-existent. Yet, the veneer of invincibility had been shattered. Media scrutiny mounted. Once silent allies in politics and business began to distance themselves. And perhaps, most damaging of all, the mythos began to erode. To younger Taiwanese, the Bamboo Union was no longer a symbol of rebellious pride or gritty survival. It was a relic, a dinosaur in an era of high-speed crime and digital dominion. And yet, rumors persisted. That the Bamboo Union wasn't dead, but merely evolving. That deep within the organization, a third generation of leaders was rising. Digital natives raised on both gangland discipline and crypto-financial agility. That what looked like a retreat might be in fact a reset. As Taiwan and the world looked toward an increasingly unpredictable future, one truth remained unchanged. The Bamboo Union had always survived by becoming what the moment required most. Soldiers in wartime, smugglers in chaos, brokers in prosperity, and ghosts when they were hunted. If this was their downfall, it would be a quiet one. But if it was their rebirth, the world might not recognize the new version until it was already embedded in its systems, transactions, and governments. There are syndicates that rise, dominate, and fade. And then there are those that leave a lingering imprint, etched into the bones of a nation, the psyche of a people, and the corners of a world that rarely acknowledges them in the daylight. The Bamboo Union is among the latter. To outsiders, it may seem like another gang, another Taiwanese offshoot of Chinese triads, a footnote in the annals of organized crime. But to understand the Bamboo Union is to understand the delicate dance of power and patriotism. Their history is inseparable from Taiwan's own evolution, from authoritarianism to democracy, from isolation to global relevance. Found in chaos, forged through war, and fueled by politics and power, the Bamboo Union has transcended the typical life cycle of a street gang. They've become more than criminals. They've become brokers of influence. Their fingerprints could be found on ballots, in boardrooms, and across battlefields of both ideology and commerce. In the shadows of Taipei's skyline, in the alleys of Bangkok, in the casinos of Macau, and the ports of Vancouver and Los Angeles, the spirit of the Bamboo Union still lingers. A name whispered, a deal struck in silence, a debt remembered. Their presence may no longer be brazen, but invisibility, after all, is the final mastery of power. And what of Taiwan, the island whose turbulent political identity helped to birth such a phenomenon? Taiwan's journey towards democracy gave rise to many things: a free press, an empowered citizenry, a complex and often fractured national identity. It also incubated the shadows. The Bamboo Union flourished not only because of violence and coercion, but because it offered something familiar: structure, brotherhood, identity, in a time when the nation itself wasn't sure what it wanted to become. Even as Taiwan pushes forward into the 21st century, modern, progressive, tech-savvy, it still wrestles with ghosts. Some of them wear suits instead of tattoos. Some of them hold bank accounts instead of switchblades. Some sit at conference tables instead of backroom dens. But all remain part of the same echo, where organized crime meets organized power. The Bamboo Union may no longer own the streets, but it helped write a chapter in Taiwan's history that cannot be erased. A chapter written not in ink, but in code, blood, silence, and survival. It is impossible to say where the Bamboo Union will go next. Perhaps deeper into the shadows, deeper underground. Perhaps reborn, refitted for a new digital frontier. Or perhaps, like many empires, they will eventually collapse under their own weight. And with that, with our timeline caught up to modern day, back to 2025, we are just past Huang Sen's death. Been just a couple of months since that. Before we head into our final takeaways, let's recap this crazy episode with today's main marks. Alright, main marks. Number 1. The United Bamboo Gang, or the Bamboo Union Gang, is one of the most fearsome triad gangs operated in the Pacific Rim today, and might have as many as 10,000 active members in Taiwan alone, with some reports putting that number close to 100,000 members worldwide. Number 2. The Bamboo Union began not as a criminal syndicate, but as a street gang. Their founders were mostly teenage boys, many of them Waishengren, the children of mainland Chinese who had fled to Taiwan with the KMT, following the nationalist retreat from mainland China after 1949 and the end of the Chinese Civil War. Number 3. On October 15, 1984, the body of Henry Liu was discovered slumped over a desk in his garage in Daly City, California. He had been shot multiple times at close range, twice in the head and twice in the body. It turned out to be a calculated hit by the Bamboo Union Gang. Number 4. One of Henry Liu's murderers was former leader Shen Shi Li, a polarizing figure who blurred the lines between crime and politics, and died of cancer in 2007 in whatever country that is, Cambodia. His lavish funeral drew over 10,000 mourners, including politicians and representatives from triads across Asia. Number 5. In response to the public outcry over Liu's murder, the government carried out Operation Clean Sweep, a widespread crackdown that led to the arrest of 2,346 gangsters and a confiscation of large quantities of guns and knives. And number 6, newer information at least. Premier Shou Zhengtai issued a warning on Thursday, March 27, 2025, after one of Taiwan's largest criminal organizations booked tables at a restaurant inside the legislative yuan to select a new gang leader. Chou's warning came after news broke on Tuesday, March 25th, that the Bamboo Union Gang, one of Taiwan's largest organized crime networks, had planned to meet at the Legislative Yuan's Kangyun restaurant to select a new gang leader. Yuan is Y-U-A-N, and Kangyun, K-A-N-G-Y-U-A-N. The restaurant is Kangyun. The spaces for 35 members of the gang's leadership were reportedly booked by Chinese Unification Promotion Party founder Shang-An Lei, who was also known as the White Wolf. Shang-An Li, might be Li or Lei. After finding out about the plans on Tuesday, Chou ordered the Interior Ministry to handle the issue, saying the Legislative Yuan's restaurant cannot be a mob den, Li said at the time. So they booked this restaurant to go and pick their new gang leader after Huan Sen, the man I talked about a little bit previously, passed away in February. In March, they're trying to pick a new leader. They book a shit ton of seats and tables at this restaurant, and the premier leader was like, yeah, we're not going to do that shit. Or maybe the leader of like this district was like, we're not doing that shit. We can't have it be a mob den. We can't promote them doing their fucking illegal crime shit. So no, don't do that. Don't have them come to your fucking restaurant for that kind of shit. They can do it on their own fucking terms at their own places. But with that, that's going to wrap up our main marks. That wraps up this story, and let's head into fucking today's final takeaways. So final takeaway, the Bamboo Union's story is one of power, survival, and constant change, deeply tied into Taiwan's own complex history. From violent beginnings to a sprawling empire of influence, their legacy still casts long shadows. Though recent cracks and crackdowns have shaken them, the gang is evolving, quietly adapting to the digital age. Whether they fade away or return stronger remains to be seen. But one thing's certain, the Bamboo Union's influence runs deeper than most realize, and their story is far from over. With that, I want to say thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review Beneath the Shadows. Whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, if you're watching on YouTube, wherever you are at, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you checking out the show. If you could like, rate, subscribe, comment, whatever it is, please support the show in any way that you can. I will have a link up for Patreon. I will have a link up for a PayPal if you want to donate at all. There is a store that will be linked to the Instagram or on the website when I get it up this week. Any of those things, if you want to come and support, check out Beneath the Shadows. Show your friends, show your family, show some strangers. I really appreciate you. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram for updates, extras, and behind-the-scenes content, for the store, for pretty much everything I do is going to be on Instagram for the most part. There is a Facebook page too if you want to go and follow the Facebook page. It's not a profile, but it's just a group on Facebook. If you look at Beneath the Shadows podcast, you will find that on Facebook. So I appreciate anyone who's taking the time. I appreciate everyone who's been listening, especially on YouTube. You are great. You're wonderful people. I truly, truly appreciate the hell out of all of you. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to check out the episodes and to come back again and see what's happening in the crazy world that we live in. With that, though, next time we will dive into some of the most incredible stories of survival. People who fell from insane heights and lived to tell the tale. You won't want to miss these jaw-dropping accounts of luck, resilience, and sheer willpower. Thank you for listening, and with that, stay curious and watch out, because you never know what lurks in the hidden underworld or what lies beneath the shadows.
Wow.